Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is Air Fortress, brought to us by HAL Laboratories. Air Fortress is a space shooter with two different unique styles of gameplay. You play as the last hope for the planet Farmel as they're trying to ward off an alien invasion. To do so, you must travel through all the air fortresses, which are part of a giant collection of spaceships. The first stage of each air fortress has you just traveling to the station itself gathering power-ups. And the second part has you traveling through a large maze inside of the air fortress itself, taking out the core of the ship and then escaping before it ends up blowing up. Air Fortress features 8 different levels and 8 different air fortresses, and once you complete them, you unlock the second quest for the game. This will end up giving you the true ending, and we will be showing that during the course of this game. So here we go with Air Fortress for the NES. After staying at the startup screen for a few seconds, you then get a nice scrolling storyline telling you all that's going on about the planet of Farmel, as well as the last hope for them, one guy named Hal. You can choose, of course, to start up a new game, or you can put in, thankfully, just a 4-digit passcode in order to pick up where you may have left off. When you start up the game, you'll get the now approaching the first air fortress, and then you're dropped into the game itself. Here you can see you have a horizontal scrolling shooter. Very simple to move around and have only one fire button. During this segment, your goal is not only to of course survive through all the enemies, but our goal is also to collect E's and B's. These will give us either more energy for the later part of the stage, or it will give us bombs, which are of course very crucial and our main form of majorly attacking during the actual inside of the air fortresses. The outsides of the air fortress, no matter if you're playing on the first or second quest, remain the same no matter what, and it's the insides that end up changing up a little bit during that second quest. While during the outside area, the different enemies you end up encountering, and there's only a handful you'll be seeing throughout each of the outside areas, have all distinctive types of movement to you. You have a few that just kind of swoop in around you, and then others are actually dictated by where you are on screen. For example, if they come up from the top and then you start moving towards them, they'll actually fly back off screen to the top, or vice versa depending upon if they're at the bottom. Getting used to the manipulating of these certain types of enemies will become crucial as far as being able to get around their different types of fire. As far as the normal enemies go though, you have the normal blue style bee-like enemy that just kind of moves in an arcing pattern that you've seen in many different types of space shooters. You have a couple of different types of those in variants, but you also then have the giant square blocks that you'll have to avoid or destroy with multiple hits, some of which can drop items, so even if you see one of the panels and don't need to actually destroy it to get through, it's a good idea to actually destroy it because you may end up getting an item. The tougher enemies you'll see in the later Air Fortress level, so here we go inside of the first Air Fortress, and you can see the gameplay changes up a lot. You're no longer on a rail, and you actually have to control where your character goes. Here you now have not only your normal attack, but you also have your bomb attack. You can see your bomb count, of course, in the upper left corner, and above that your energy. If you're familiar with the game Metroid, the health system is kinda similar to that game. However, during Air Fortress, you actually lose health every time you fire your gun, or you end up just moving around. Now, you don't permanently lose the health you lose for actually firing or moving, and if you stand still on a platform for a little bit of time, it'll actually regain. The insides of the areas are giant mazes, and your real goal here is just to try to figure your way through it. All these different branching paths here can get quite confusing, and once you've actually blown up the core or the boss of each of the areas, you really need to hurry up and get out of there as quickly as possible, or you'll end up game overing once the ship ends up exploding. So knowing your way around is going to be crucial in order to actually being able to complete the game. While the first few air fortresses are pretty straightforward, some of the later ones are so big and so massive without really having a kind of map or drawing your own, it's really kind of impossible sometimes to get through these. Inside the air fortresses themselves, of course, are completely different enemies than the ones from outside. You have kind of the beacon enemies, they're either yellow or blue, mainly blue ones you'll be seeing as we get farther into the game, and they take 2 shots to take out. You have these center cores, like the one just to the left of me I just destroyed, that keeps firing out projectiles at you, and there's 2 different types of projectiles. The white ball ones that just kind of come towards you but don't actually follow you, and then the dark orange or red ones that actually try to chase you down. As I make my way up this elevator, I make it to the first core, destroy it with a couple of bombs, and then immediately continue over to the right in order to grab the airship to escape. Of course, being the very first air fortress is extremely simple, and just kind of get used to the game mechanics. As you can see, once you destroy the boss core, the whole screen ends up going dark. Eventually the screen will start to shake, then start to flash, and once the flashing starts you have a very limited time left to get through, and after it flashes for enough time the flashing will increase until the entire thing ends up exploding. After defeating a core and getting to your spaceship, you move on to the second level of the game, or the second air fortress. Almost all of the parts of this begin with the kind of floating butterfly-like enemies that you see there, and then the other ones will be slowly added as you continue, including these jack-like enemies. These kind of circle around you, and once they get close to you, you'll have to keep moving around in the circle to try to get them to get away from you and get into an open area where you actually can launch a shot at them. In later areas of the game, especially the second quest, these actually gain projectiles, so they'll be firing at you while they're also circling you. Thankfully though, after a few seconds, even if you're unable to destroy them, just keep circling them and eventually they will just kind of bear off screen and disappear, which is the case for most of the enemies during the outside portion of the game. Here you'll have these pink ball-like enemies, and these launch out of the corridors on the very bottom of the ship, as you can see there. They just kind of line up 5 at a time and fire at you just directly wherever you are, so just keep firing straight to get rid of them. Right after those though, we were introduced to the first kind of enemies that kind of float in on you and then disappear depending upon what direction you end up moving, and there's 2 types of these. You have the spaceship-like ones, as we saw, as well as you have ones that are kind of like coins. While they are different, and the coin ones I think are a little bit faster than the spaceships, they pretty much behave the same way since they're both manipulated by whatever you're at on the screen. One of the other big hazards, of course, is just the actual surroundings to you, especially in small tight areas, but thankfully the ship itself, while it is quite large, doesn't have that bad of hit detection. You actually have a little bit of leniency on all sides of the ship in order to try to maneuver yourself into tight small areas. This really comes in handy, especially when trying to gather certain amounts of energy or bomb power-ups that you need. Once you reach the end though, you automatically enter the air fortress, and now we're inside air fortress number 2. The second air fortress is a little bit more difficult than the first one, but still not as difficult as some of the ones we'll definitely be seeing later on, especially air fortress number 6. Maneuver yourself around and watch out of course for the spikes lining the floor here. Of course running into them will cause you a decent amount of damage, but it's not an instant death or anything. These enemies right here, the ones that kind of have like the spikes coming out of the top of them, end up firing a stream of projectiles straight down. These are some of the most annoying enemies in the entire game, because as soon as you get near them is when they actually start firing them, and most of the time you're going to find them in areas where you're not going to be able to hit them, so you're going to have to wait for an opening in their projectile stream in order to kind of cut through and get past them. When you get a couple of these lined up in a row, it can really slow you down, causing you to lose precious time, especially during the time after you've destroyed the boss core. And since so many times they end up being in areas that you can't even hit, you'll definitely get frustrated a time or two when trying to escape from the ships and those guys keep getting in your way. Here you're noticing that we have different spikes in the game that kind of have these glass jars around them. These types of spikes at the bottom end up pulling you towards them. so you'll have to get used to trying to actually stop getting pulled towards them and maneuver around different platforms you may need to go around. There's a couple of areas in the game where these will be a nuisance, especially when trying to travel upwards, and there's a whole bunch of them lined up in a row. In big open areas with the canister-like robots that just fire the single projectiles at a time, you can really maneuver around them quite easily, getting to the most open area possible on screen, and then trying to just jump in and out or float in and out of all their different shots. If you're unable to obtain a lot of bombs or a lot of energy before entering one of the air fortresses themselves, be sure to destroy a lot of just the normal regular enemies throughout. Even the ones that are just easy and you can easily escape from and don't even have to bother may be worth taking out because you may get the opportunity to grab another bomb or energy upgrade. Also, some of the enemies take away so much damage from you, every little bit of energy counts, so if possible to avoid fire, try to do your best to do so, though sometimes you're just going to want to feel like running through everything and take as much damage as possible. Then when you get low, then trying to be conservative can be a little bit of troublesome because of some of the more tougher enemies that will then appear, especially near the ends of different air fortresses. Now the cores themselves can take just a few hits from the normal gun, or you can use a bomb to pretty much destroy them instantly with just one of those bombs. Just be sure that you have at least 5 or 6 bombs before you make it to one of the enemy cores, because trying to defeat the boss cores without bombs can be really a pain, as it'll take tons of shots, and you may just not have enough energy to deal that many shots to the thing before it ends up being destroyed. If you're wondering about the rotating platforms here that can sometimes squash you on the ground or ceiling, don't worry, they're not instant deaths by any means, you just lose a little bit of health when they start squashing you. Also, I'm not giving an exact direction step by step of the way, just kind of follow the video along with where I'm going if you were actually interested in using the video to try to guide yourself through. Though, I will say right now, there actually is fantastically done maps on game FAQs that are done that can really help you out is trying to figure out the exact direct path. Though I do have a couple of differences from those that I prefer to try to get out of some of the later fortresses a little bit easier. After you destroy another one of the cores, keep going over to the left, watch out for another one of these guys on the ceiling, and go through this elevator and down. While of course there is multiple different paths to get out of the air fortress and make it to your escape ship, there's usually only one real way that you'll be able to make it to it in the quickest amount of time and actually be able to salvage the mission instead of end up exploding. One thing I think the game could have really benefited from is some kind of countdown clock it could have given you, so you have a better idea of how much longer you have before the game ends up causing you the game over from the explosion. Make sure that you choose the left pipe here, as this is the one you'll want to take in order to actually make it to the escape ship. Once going through that pipe, we just have one more of those little cores to destroy before we make it to the escape ship and escape from Air Fortress number 2 and move on to number 3. Now, Air Fortress number 3, you can see we have kind of a yellow layout to the stage itself, but pretty much the enemies, and our goal will be the same of just collecting the energy and bombs. These spaceships and the coin-like enemies here are the ones, like I said, when you start to head towards them, up or down, they end up flying off screen. Now, these guys are some of the more annoying ones because they just fly at you from whatever direction they feel like, coming directly towards you, and you have to keep maneuvering and moving around in order to escape actually running headfirst into them. I have to say that the game is interesting that you have the spaceship itself that only can take one hit of damage before it's destroyed, and when you're actually just kind of walking around on your own, you of course have the energy meter itself. It would have been kind of cool to see a combination of combining the two into one instead of just having a one-hit kill during the scrolling shooting area. Now these eyeball-like ships, I like to call them, or unknowns from the Pokemon universe, appear and then they kind of just dive down really quickly. They're not really controlled by where you are on screen, so just try to stay away from them and keep firing at them if possible. If you're able to hit a few of them, you may be able to get a little bit of extra item or energy. Now the outside of the areas of course are getting tougher, but it's pretty much more of the same from this point on. I don't think there's any new enemies that are introduced after this point in the game, so just getting used to the patterns and the way to kind of manipulate them is what we're going to be doing and trying to get better at them, rather than trying to deal with new enemies that may come up. When we drop down inside, we have a bunch of the normal canister-like robots ready to try to take us out. Now here introduces one of the circular orb-like enemies that kind of fires out a flamethrower. While these guys aren't too big or annoying trying to get in your way, if they end up running into you, they cause a lot of damage. The projectile really doesn't hurt you and is easy to dodge, but if they're kind of floating right around you, it may be best to try to take them out because, like I said, running into you will drain your energy rather quick. The worst enemies to deal with, besides just the guys on the ceiling and walls that are hard to hit, are the clone type enemies, the enemies that are pretty much exactly like you, just different colors. And depending upon what color they are, they're faster or more aggressive, but either way these guys are extremely annoying and you'll want to take them out as quickly as possible, usually with bombs to do so. Especially if you have plenty of extras, just keep firing all those bombs that you can at them. Another interesting enemy is the mech-like enemy that we just saw there. This enemy kind of jumps around on his own and can fire out a ton of bullets rather quickly. Taking him out with a bomb is pretty easy, or you can fire about 5 or 6 normal shots into him if you're able to actually get those shots to land in order to get rid of him that way. One of the more annoying things about the game is as soon as you end up landing from one of the elevators and actually get out of the elevator, usually you're bombarded, depending upon what screen you're on, by tons of projectiles. And since the projectiles come at you at a regular pace, it can be sometimes impossible to get out of the elevator without taking at least some damage. One way to kind of look at it though, if there's enemies just directly in front of you, is come out of the elevator, fire a projectile, and the blowback that you end up getting from every time you end up firing your gun or bombs will push you back inside the elevator for safety. You can wait for the projectiles to disappear before then escaping. When we make it into this room, we drop down, destroying another one of those cores before heading back up and enter the same pipe that we used in order to enter this area. However, when you end up leaving through that pipe, you'll find yourself in a completely different area. And this is another key of the game, that the pipes you enter not necessarily will take you to the same place you actually entered them from. And this is for almost all the pipe type situations in the game. There's only 1 or 2 that will actually traverse back and forth between one another. The butterfly-like enemies you see here are another one that's pretty annoying because they're the only enemy that can actually follow you through the elevators. When you go up or down in an elevator and one of them is chasing you, as soon as you come out, they can still be there as they can travel through floors. Try to take these guys out, especially if you have more than one of them on you. Just use a bomb on them if you're able to hit them and have a few extra ones to spare. If not, you can kind of just stand still for a second and try to mash the normal attack button to get rid of them that way. Thankfully, in the lower left corner here, we find another ship, and we move on to Air Fortress number 4. Now we're in Air Fortress outside area number 4, and this one is now a blue area, but pretty much the same thing that we've been dealing with. You'll have the same type of enemies. They get a little bit more aggressive as we go on. As you can see now, the ships are firing a lot more projectiles at us than they were before. However, for the most part, it's still the same ones. Our goal, of course, is to try to fit into any of the tight areas we possibly can in order to gather up all the extra energy and bombs. As you can see, since the ship is actually quite large, but because the hit detection on it and the hitbox for it isn't too large, you can fit through a lot of the tight areas and have a lot of room to work with considering how big the ship is. But besides energy and bombs, you've noticed that there is 2 other power-ups to get as well. You have the cross, which destroys any enemy currently on screen, and then you have the circular-like upgrade that gives you invulnerability for a short period of time. The only thing with the invulnerability is you can still die by running into solid objects, so if you run into the floor or ceiling or one of the platforms randomly set up, you will still end up losing a life that way. And you only unfortunately have 3 lives to get through the area before you end up getting a game over, but thankfully that's usually plenty in order to actually make it inside of the air fortress itself. With a little bit of maneuvering, you're actually able to get in between the different platforms here to gather most of the energy, and if you're quick enough, you can actually get all 3. Just be careful that as soon as that area ends, you have a bunch of those little coin robots showing up, firing a lot of projectiles at you. Right afterwards, though, we end up landing and going inside the 4th air fortress. As we start up this air fortress, watch out for the first 2 robots, and then quickly hover in between the spikes set up on the ceiling and ground right there. Over here, you'll have to destroy the wall so you can actually make it through, but be careful because you will try to get pulled down by the spikes below. The same will happen a little bit to the left, but thankfully we can easily get into the pipe above. The next room, stand on an area where there is no spike, and then work your way up. Once you get these spikes off screen, they no longer will try to pull you towards them. As soon as you make it onto the next screen though, one of the butterfly-like enemies will come towards you and usually drops an item, so if you need an item there, be sure to grab the one that it ends up dropping. Once you make it to the elevator though, instead of going down, we're going to be heading upwards, not once, but actually twice. This way we'll be at the top and where we actually need to go. Once up here, continue heading over to the right, you'll find one of the giant cores, so destroy that, and then keep hovering. After entering the next pipe, it's time for the boss core here, and you have a nice little area to stay at on the far right side in order to actually destroy it, while also being safe from projectiles. As soon as it's destroyed though, immediately re-enter the pipe that you came in from. It'll take you of course to a new area with another one of those cores set up right there, so immediately fire a bomb in order to destroy it, and then enter the elevator in the upper right corner. Once you're back outside of the elevator itself, just keep moving around, watching out for as many of the projectiles as you can. Here you'll have a little bit of trouble because of the 2 spiked robots on the top and bottom that'll cause a whole bunch of projectiles to come at you. When you make it out of this elevator, you're going to have one of those rival spacemen trying to attack you. So be ready and have your finger on the bomb so you can fire at the small corridor area, so you should be able to hit him with one of the bombs. A nicely timed bomb and hitting him at the right spot will cause enough damage from the bomb itself to destroy them with only 1 bomb. If you end up hitting him just a little bit off or he ends up running away from the explosion, it may take 2 bombs to get rid of one of these guys. There's another one also in the room, but since the area is a little bit more open at that point, you may be able to maneuver around them. Just get into the upper right corner and get to the next elevator, and then enter the spaceship to escape and make it to Air Fortress number 5. Now, if you're playing the second quest of the game, level 5 is where things actually start to get a little bit different. Between the first and second quest, the first 4 levels are the exact same outside and inside the fortresses, with the exception of a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more enemies overall. However, from 5 on to 8, The insides of the fortresses are the same layouts, but all the different paths you're going to need to take are different because the warps take you to different locations. So when I end up beating the game its first playthrough, when I start up the second playthrough, we're just going to skip right to Fortress number 5. That way you don't have to see the same thing over again, and trust me, even with the more aggressive enemies, it's not that much more different. Whenever the invulnerability shows up, of course you're going to want to grab it, and once you do have it though, focus on taking out as many of the normal enemies that you can, even ones that normally you would just avoid all around, because you of course may get lucky for other item drops. The only real new enemy that introduces later on in the game is the giant ship itself. These stay on a certain plane and they don't move up or down, but they consistently keep firing out lasers for a long period of time before eventually they will fade off screen. However, if you want to destroy them, they take quite a few shots to take out. I recommend if there's no other enemies on screen, get up close to them and just mash the attack button as fast as possible to try to get rid of them quickly before other enemies end up showing up, because once they do, the battle against the ship can be a lot tougher since you're going to have to dodge those projectiles, and trying to get around that laser fire with projectiles will usually end up resulting in a death. Here we have Air Fortress number 5, and now we're halfway through our first quest of Air Fortress. Start off by maneuvering all the way down the very large corridor. There's going to be a ton of projectiles, but if you stay in about the middle of the screen, you'll see that you'll be able to avoid almost all the fire from the different ships on the left and right sides. Next up, you'll have a choice of going up or down. Choose the down path and watch out for the mech enemy that's going to be sitting there. Destroy him and then keep moving on, destroy the core right ahead, and then just keep maneuvering until you make it to the end of the area. Head up the elevator, skip the first exit, and just keep going up to the second one. When you get up here, maneuver around a little bit to the left so you can get this guy to come down, and then attack him with normal fire. Since the area you're attacking him in is rather small, he won't be able to get too many shots in on you, and you don't have to waste a bomb on him. Once he's taken care of course, then continue maneuvering around. Here, take out another one of their spherical enemies, because you're going to have to wait a few seconds for the spiral thing to end up going down before you can make it past. Watch out for a few of their spikes pulling towards the ground, and then immediately go into the pipe. Once into the next room, head over to the right and head up, and here is where the boss chamber actually is located. Stay on the right wall and fire a bunch of bombs at it. As soon as you have the opening, start heading back down, maneuvering around the enemies that are here, and go to the pipe below. This is where I differentiate from the map system that was talked about earlier on from Game FAQs. Here, by going back in the pipe seems to be a much quicker way to get through here than by going through the pipe entrance they ended up recommending, and I was actually able to complete the level a lot easier. This is one of the few times where one of the pipes you enter actually takes you back to the same area you entered from. Make it back to the elevator on the right, and now go down and exit out of this area this time, as this is where we actually need to go. Have your firing ready and destroy all the blocks that you're going to need to destroy as you keep moving over to the left. You should have plenty of time still left in order to make it through and make it to the ship. Just be careful because there's going to be a lot of enemies on that left side once you actually enter that screen where the ship is located, including 2 of those evil clone-like aliens. Enter the ship and we move on to Air Fortress number 6. Thankfully, we have only 3 more air fortresses left to take out. Now, the outside area 4 of 6 starts off pretty much the same way as a lot of them do, with kind of the rotating up and down, floating butterfly-like ships. before some of the tougher enemies end up showing up a few seconds later. Here you're going to have a lot of panels to destroy in order to get into different areas so you can gather lots of extra energy and bombs. You'll have to be very quick, but if you time it right, you should be able to gather all the energy throughout this area, throughout all the columns. As long as you're quick enough, you'll have no problem. If for some reason though it doesn't look like you're quite going to be able to make it, of course you can always bail, because losing a life is going to be worse than just grabbing that one extra piece of energy. While it kind of blends in a little bit, be sure to grab the bomb upgrade at the very bottom of the screen here. You'll also have another one just a little bit ahead that also kind of blends in with the background. After a pretty decent firefight with a bunch of the different enemy ships, you'll then get into another one of those areas where you'll destroy a panel and go in between different platforms. Right after that, more of those evil jacks end up appearing and start chasing you around. There's multiple sets here, so there's going to be a lot of them on screen if you're unable to take out any of them. Here we're entering Air Fortress number 6, and Air Fortress 6 is the hardest and worst of all of them in the game. And this even includes this second quest, as I find this Air Fortress harder than even the version of the same one in the second quest. There's of course a bunch of maneuvering around and a lot of trying to get through all the different pipes and elevators. However, it's once you destroy the core that the area ends up becoming really tough, because you're going to have very little time and very few mistakes are going to be able to get made in order to actually escape from this fortress. Thankfully we have a decent amount of bombs, but you're going to make sure you have as many as possible, because when you're escaping, these are going to become crucial in order to try to defeat as many enemies as possible. Anything that gets in your way during the escape can end up causing you to get knocked back just that little bit, and that half a second or so that you end up losing can be very critical. So basically, in my opinion, if you're able to get through 6, you shouldn't have too much trouble getting through 7 or 8. We also were unable to get a ton of energy coming into this area, and since a lot of the enemies are pretty tough during some of the tougher areas, and since you're going to want to hurry, try to conserve as much of your energy as you can before you end up reaching the boss. When you make it out of the elevator here, immediately take out the clone-like alien to your left and then start dropping down, hanging out in about the middle of the screen for most of it before you make it to the next elevator in the lower right. Here you're going to have to maneuver around a whole bunch of blocks, and choose the left side here so you can make it into the pipe in the upper left. Now here is the boss chamber itself. You're going to want to manipulate it a little bit so that you can get it so your escape will be as quick as possible. And it's a little bit tough to do with the giant screws moving up and down. Fire a few shots at the core itself. It usually takes about 5 or 6 bombs in order to destroy the core. Also be sure to fire those shots when the screw is in an area that you're going to be able to get past the first one at least before having to wait for it. Because the second one, you're going to have to wait for it to go all the way back down before you're going to be able to escape. so every second is counting here. And once you get back to the top, immediately enter the pipe in the upper left. You'll have a whole bunch of enemies, and hopefully you have a decent amount of energy that you'll be able to run through at least some of them during this segment. Go through kind of the center of the blocks that you have to break and have your bomb finger ready so you can destroy a bunch of the clone enemies that you may run into, and some of the cores as well. When you make it to the elevator here and move upwards, you can see that of course the place is already shaking, so you're already losing about half the amount of time you have. Start immediately heading up to the top of this area, hugging mainly the left or right walls to try to avoid as much of the projectile firing from the giant squares that come at you as possible. Go up the elevator, and when you come out, immediately fire bombs at the core to get rid of it, and then try to take out the mech itself. If you can't destroy the mech with a bomb directly, just keep moving. Try to get past it and ignore it for the most part. The next area is a little bit more open, but try to destroy any of the other aliens type fighters that do appear here, because they will try to chase you down, and running into you will cause you to lose a decent amount of health, and we don't have a ton of health left at this point. Go down this elevator and start heading over to the left, and you're going to have to circle back around all the way over to the right. Now, we were here earlier, but there's no easier way to get here than the exit we ended up taking from the boss chamber. At this point, the screen starts to flash, so you know you're getting lower and lower on time. Go in the pipe in the upper right corner, and as soon as you appear, hug the left wall. You'll start falling here, and there's going to be a whole lot of crystals flying at you. Thankfully, they won't be able to hit you since you're actually hugging that left wall. Then as soon as you get to the breakable blocks, immediately start firing and get in the ship just a few seconds before the place ends up exploding. You'll escape once again and move on to Air Fortress number 7, which thankfully is a little bit easier. Now, at the beginning of the next part, stay at the bottom of the spike thing here so you can actually hit the panel, then move up into the area where the panel was and destroy the next one so you can get the energy just above that. Then immediately come back down and grab the energy in between. You'll then have to destroy some more paneling so you can actually reach all the energy during the beginning part here, and there is a lot of energy, but it's pretty much going to be needed for a lot of the tougher enemies during the actual Air Fortress part itself. Here, with a little bit of maneuvering, you can actually get around all the area and collect all the power-ups that you need. Here, grab an invincibility that thankfully one of these panels was lucky enough to drop, and then we can grab the extra bombs in the upper right. We now thankfully have already 25 bombs, so we'll have a little bit more freedom when it comes to the inside part of the fortress itself. This fortress area is rather short though, but we have plenty of power-ups in order to actually help us out. As soon as you exit the elevator, immediately fire a bomb. You'll get knocked back into the elevator itself, but if timed correctly, you'll be able to protect yourself from any damage and destroy the two enemies right outside the elevator. Then start heading downwards and working your way to the lower left corner. Here you'll have to climb up a rather large area, and there's a bunch of projectiles coming at you, but thankfully the area is big and you can hang out in the middle to avoid most of them. Here, choose the upper path instead of the bottom path and work your way over, destroying this wall so you can head inside. As soon as you destroy this wall, there will be a mech waiting for you. Try to hit it with one of the bombs if possible. Usually the mech immediately goes back into the lower right corner, which of course is where the elevator is that we need to enter. As soon as you head down the elevator there will be one of the butterfly enemies, so try to take this out or just try to outrun it if possible. But there's going to be so many projectiles on screen at once during the little segment here that it's best to try to take it out early. One little thing you can do is when you're being attacked by lots of different enemies is when you're facing an actual wall that you're right near, you can fire a bomb directly at it and it won't hurt you, but since the explosion is pretty big, it will hit enemies around there. As you can see, if you don't destroy one of the butterflies, it will chase you relentlessly through the whole area. When you enter into this pipe, you'll now be in another of those rooms where you're falling down, and there's a bunch of the other rival enemies during this segment. With a little bit of manipulating, you can kind of get past them and just keep falling straight down, and you don't actually have to destroy them. Another pink one will appear on the right side, right at the pipe that you need to enter, so you'll have to be very careful trying to get up there, so it may be best to take out the rival guys before you try to make it down into that pipe. In the next room, break down the wall and then destroy the core, destroying it for this air fortress. Just to the left of it, you'll see breakable wall. The white blocks you'll either have to hit a ton of times with normal fire, or just fire a bomb straight at it in order to get rid of them. Either way, destroy at least one of them so you can quickly get by and keep moving on. Next up, immediately destroy the rival guy that appears here and destroy the top core so you can maneuver in between the platforms and make it into the top pipe as quick as possible. In the next room, you'll have a mech just below you, so destroy that and then keep heading over to the left. You're going to have a lot of different projectiles coming at you, but thankfully you'll have enough health in order to get through this. Then you'll have to destroy another breakable wall, one of which you'll have to hit with a bomb, and then enter the spaceship in order to complete Air Fortress 7, and now we have only one more Air Fortress to go. And so begins the final outside area of our first quest of Air Fortress. Now, of course, this is the final one of the areas outside of the fortresses, so there's a ton of enemies here, not gonna lie. There, as you can see already, there's a lot of stuff flying at you, a lot of ships, and a lot of projectiles and firing from those particular ships. Thankfully, after a large cluster of them, it slows down a bit, and you can sit there and collect a bunch of items. The items are pretty close to different perils on the walls and ground, so just be careful you don't run into those while moving around. Right after that though, it opens back up and there's a ton more of those cube-like projectiles, the coins, and the other regular spaceships all firing projectiles directly at you. Try to do your best, as soon as you see them starting to spawn on screen, move up or down to try to wipe them off the screen quick enough so they don't linger and get too many shots off on you. Do your best to take out the big ship so that you don't have that to contend with all the other enemies going on, especially when these giant jack-like enemies show up, because they're going to be a real nuisance and probably cause you to lose a life with everything that's going to be on screen at once. Just keep moving in circles around to get those jack guys to go off screen, and then prepare for the next set of enemies that are going to be coming towards you. A few seconds later, another one of those giant ships, which, thankfully, there won't be any other enemies with it. It's just another one of those ships you can easily take out before the next horde of enemy ships end up appearing. Destroy the giant floating panels during this little segment here so you can grab all the energy that is inside the big area. Thankfully, one of them will most likely drop an item, and if you're lucky, it may be an extra energy or bomb, or even an invincibility, or you can just destroy the other panel with an all-destruct button. Every bit of energy is going to count during the final segment, so be sure to destroy the giant panels here to grab the next energy. 2 giant ships will then appear. The only free area you're really going to have is at the very bottom of the screen, but use this to your advantage to try to get away from the jack enemies chasing you down. After just a little bit, the big ships will go off screen, so you don't have to destroy them, though it's probably the toughest segment of the area, but thankfully it's also the end of the segment. Now we've entered inside of the final air fortress of the game, Air Fortress number 8. Now this one is the longest maze by far. I still stick by that number 6 is the hardest and most difficult, mainly due to the time limit you're given after the boss has been destroyed. However, unless you're a little bit careful and conserve your health a bit, because this level is so long, that's what makes this level so difficult. Hopefully you've gotten at least 15 or 20 bombs before entering into the areas, so that you have plenty of ammo to destroy a lot of the tougher enemies, especially the clone enemies or the giant mechs. Only use your bombs when you absolutely have to, and sometimes like here you're gonna have to, or just go through the weird slime trail that the red orb ends up forming. If you go through quickly, you shouldn't lose too much health, but do not linger in it, of course, because it drains the health really fast. Hopefully, while going through and you destroy a few enemies with bombs, especially those little mini cores, hopefully they drop a few extra items, especially some extra bombs would be nice. This segment is definitely a little congested as there's a lot of things firing at you. Stay towards the middle of the screen like we've been doing in these types of segments to try to avoid a large amount of the fire. At the bottom will be one of those rival enemies. Try to avoid it or take it out with a bomb before going into the elevator and continuing downwards. Work your way down here and around this corner, luring the rival enemy around so that you can destroy him with a bomb. Firing directly at the wall that you're near will actually help you out, because you may be able to hit the guy even while he's still above you on a previous platform. When you jump into the elevator, you'll actually bypass another one of the rooms of the area. This is when things actually get confusing, because you'll do this a couple of times, and we actually want to get into the elevator just to the right and actually drop down now into the room we had just elevatored past. Once you get into here, there will be a lot of enemies flying at you for the first little bit. Try to get past all of them and get to the next elevator. Next, you'll be in another one of those big open type area rooms where you're heading up. Once again, staying in the middle is your best bet to avoid as much fire as possible. There will be one of those rival guys here as well, and thankfully the first pipe to enter to kind of break things up. Inside here, though, you're introduced to a new enemy. This is one of the few times we're actually introduced to new enemies in the game, and it's a giant tank. This thing will start firing at you, and its projectiles can hurt you a pretty good amount, though you can destroy the projectile with direct fire hitting the actual projectile itself. You can waste a decent amount of bombs here, but kind of mix it up. Use a bomb and normal fire, and you should be able to take the guy out with about 5 or so bombs. Thankfully, and hopefully, you still have plenty left, as you actually have another one of those giant tanks to contend with a little bit later on, and there is plenty of other guys who drop some items, so hopefully you can pick up another bomb upgrade if you're getting low. While it may not seem worth it at times to waste a bomb on one of the rival guys, it actually may be your benefit because they will most of the time drop items for you. When you go through the next pipe, you'll appear here and take the upper path, walking underneath the spikes and getting to the next area. Right afterwards, you'll go through another pipe and you'll be in pretty much a similar area that you just were in, at least the same starting type point. This time though, we're going to be going around the bottom path, though it's a much more open area this time around, so it doesn't matter really which side you decide to go on. When you do reach the elevator on the left side, be sure to go up and enter another one of the long rooms. You'll kind of have to float in between the different openings on the walls here, and work your way slowly upwards. Thankfully, there's not too many enemies and none of those rival spacemen here, so it's a pretty easy segment for this stage. Once outside of the elevator though, at the top, instead of going to the upper left, you want to start heading over to the right, watching out for the weird UFO-like enemy that has appeared. These are one of the more annoying enemies as well, as they just kind of spawn at you really quickly, and then after a few seconds after flying at you, they then retract and go away. They don't do a ton of damage, but they seemingly like to get in the way in some of the worst moments of the game. After you get out of the pipe, start heading upwards. If you go dead center, you should be able to avoid a large amount, if not all, of the fire. After you're making it past the second opening, you will have a bunch of the little cube guys start coming at you, so this is when you'll have to slow up and wait for them to pass before continuing up. Right after them though is another one of those rival guys, so be sure to take him out, and do the same with the next couple. Finally, you'll reach the top of the area. Go up the upper right side and you'll make it to the actual boss itself. Here, use bombs like we've been doing the last few times to destroy it, and then immediately start heading back down. Watch out for the guy hanging here and go into the upper left pipe just to the left of him. You'll spawn back in this area, but instead of taking the upper path this time, we're going to take the lower path, watching out for spikes along the way once again, and going into another one of those pipes. Here is the second hallway with one of those giant mechs, and we'll take him out the same way as we took out the first one, using a mix-up of the bombs as well as the normal projectiles. If you keep doing the little float in the air if you'd like, you can actually destroy those projectiles it fires out, though you should have plenty of bombs left, at least 5 or so, and you'll be able to take him out, or just mash the regular fire button as fast as you can. Go into the pipe just to the right of the mech and start heading upwards here. It's another one of these long hallways, and you'll have a bunch of projectiles, but it's not too long of an area before you make it to another elevator. Head up the elevator and then head over to the right. Watch out for another one of those rival guys and one of those solid UFO-like spaceships and head down the next elevator. Once going down this elevator, start heading down. There will be a rival guy here, as well as a few other guys trying to fire at you. If you have any bombs left, you can use them now, as we're almost near the end of this area. After going down the next elevator, just head to the right and drop down the little opening that's now available for you to actually get to. There will be a guy trying to stop you, one last really kind of attempt to take you out, and there'll also be a mech along the way as well, though thankfully if you're quick enough you should be able to avoid most of his fire that he ends up getting out. Drop down this little opening, destroy the wall, and enter the spaceship, and finish the 8th and final Air Fortress for our first quest of Air Fortress. So as you can see, it's not the true ending, just kind of a pass-off for you to continue on in the second quest. Instead of showing though the first 4 levels, since they're the exact same, we're just going to transition to where I pick up at the beginning of the outside area of Air Fortress number 5 in my second quest run. I'll now show all 4 of the last levels of the second quest, and of course showing the extra ending as well. Since the first 4 levels are the exact same outside and inside, there's really no benefit to showing them again. Though, with the final 4 levels, the only thing that changes up is the insides, and that is actually just the layouts of where the pipes end up taking you inside of the place. So, the way we end up traveling is a bit different. The good news is, though, level 6, which was one of the hardest stages in the first quest, is actually a bit easier. It's still a relatively tough air fortress to get through, but it's not as tough as it was originally. Our goals for the outside areas remain the same, collecting a whole bunch of energy and bombs and avoiding as much fire as possible. Though with the second quest, there seems to be more enemies and more aggressiveness from the enemies, as they seem to fire out a lot more projectiles this time around. Keep repeating the process of going around in circles for the jacks and try to manipulate the coin-like enemies and little spaceships as well to try to get them to do exactly what you want them to and get them off screen quickly so they don't end up causing you to lose a life. Thankfully, after a pretty long firefight, we've collected a decent amount of energy and bombs, and we land to enter the 5th fortress of the second quest of the game. The entire layout for each of the air fortresses is the exact same that you saw before, especially as far as room layout goes. Since it's really just the warps that are going to be changing up, those are the key things you'll have to pay attention to during my second quest runs of the air fortresses if you're looking to figure it out yourself and try to beat the game's second quest. And actually, it is kind of worth it. The ending to the second quest is a heck of a lot better than the ending you got for completing the first quest. It's not also one of those games where even when you complete the second quest, all it says is, hey, congratulations, you beat the second quest. There really wasn't any point to you doing that. This game changes that a little bit. It's not a most spectacular ending by any means, but it's still a worthy ending for actually taking the time to complete its second quest. Things can get pretty tight up, especially in this area with two of those rivalry guys as well as a ton of projectiles coming at you, and including spikes on the wall and ground, so just try to get through there fast by firing a few extra bombs if you have any on your arsenal to try to take out at least a few enemies. Here you'll see the Air Fortress escape ship, but we can't of course use it yet because we need to actually destroy the boss core. These guys moving around making all that weird slime-like everywhere are some of the more annoying enemies right there, because there's two of them, and they cover a lot of ground really quickly, so just try to get through there to the opposite end and get to the next room. Here, you just keep using your bombs wisely in order to actually destroy a lot of the cores and rivalry guys that end up appearing. There's other enemies as well, but those are going to be the keys, of course, to actually getting through areas. Not just because of health and all, but just being able to get through without just keep getting knocked back after hit after hit after hit from all the different projectiles. In the next room, you'll have a big corridor, and there's going to be a couple of those gray rivalry guys, but just start heading down straight. There'll be another one near the bottom, but hopefully you can get around them, not have to waste the bombs, and get to the pipe in the middle of the screen. As soon as you appear here, though, there's going to be another guy waiting for you. Destroy him, fly up on the right side, and destroy the boss core. As you can see, the boss core room is the exact same as it was during the first quest. Once you destroy it, drop back down and go into the same pipe we entered the room from. You'll of course be in a different area this time around. Though you do know technically where we're going, it's just trying to figure out how to get back to that spot through all the different pipes and all is the key. But trust me, it's not too difficult. Getting over to the left side here, we can drop down. As soon as you pop out of the elevator here, be sure to press a bomb so you can destroy this guy before actually attempting to move forward. Unfortunately, one of those butterfly guys will show up here, and he's going to try to take you out to the best of his ability. Head in the elevator and go down not one, but go down two different of the elevator shafts, and then head out. Of course, this will try to pull you towards it, but just keep going forward. You know where you are now, watching out for the butterfly the best you can, and making it over to the left, destroying the little bit of wall that's there, and just run through the enemy if you need to in order to get to the spaceship and escape the first air fortress that we're doing in the second quest, Air Fortress number 5. We're now making our way towards Air Fortress 6, which was the hardest during the first quest, and is probably the hardest during the second, but just not as hard as its first quest counterpart. Okay, so we're in another outside segment. Now, this one, of course, is very similar to what it was during the first quest of the game. I'm sure you probably recognize this some of the layout, especially due to the giant columns here that you have to work in between in order to collect all the energy, and of course you want to do your best to collect as much of this energy as you possibly can. And while, yes, there's a lot more enemies and they're more aggressive, there isn't a whole lot of new strategies you can really implement that you didn't already implement during the first quest of the game. So, just be sure to grab the kind of hidden bomb upgrade there at the bottom that kind of blends in with the background. I find it even blends in more so during this quest than it did during the first quest, because I think they used a different palette of colors on this version of the level than they used on the first version of the stage. Either way, just keep taking out all the enemies, firing, grabbing any of the power-ups you can, and just hope and slowly make your way towards the Air Fortress itself. After collecting a ton of bombs this time around, we end up landing and entering inside Air Fortress 6 of the second quest. Inside here, we exit the elevator and start heading down to the left and head over to the right instead of the far left side. You'll immediately destroy a core and you'll see one of those rivalry guys waiting for you above. Destroy some of the breakable wall and take out the mech if you like. A well-timed bomb shot, as you can see, takes him out with one shot. Then destroy this wall and fire with only one opening available currently, as it gives you a better opportunity to fire shots at the rivalry guy before he's able to get in his shots, because he has a hard time aiming, it seems like. Once he's destroyed, of course, break the other piece of the wall and continue on. Here you'll have another large chunk of wall that you'll have to destroy with mech on the left side and a mech on the right side. Once again, a bomb will be your best friend getting rid of these guys. Once you head down the elevator, start heading down towards the middle of the screen, watching out for most of the canister robots on the left and right sides, firing a ton of projectiles. When you get near the end, you'll start getting pulled towards the actual spikes at the ground depending upon where you're floating at, so just kind of hug the left wall a little bit and enter inside the elevator. As soon as you exit, another rivalry guy will be waiting for you. Just try to get past him, and then work your way down, eventually having to circle back around and work your way up. You'll want to destroy this guy now because you'll have another one of the guys waiting for you as you make your way up the right side. Here, we've already actually made it into the boss room itself. Wait for the right opportunity and move through the different rotating blocks. Once again, just like last time, you'll have to wait for this one to go back up, and then you can go actually past it and down. It of course will go off screen, and you'll have to do a little bit of manipulating, and we're going to do the same type of manipulating we did the first time around, waiting for the right opportunity in order to explode the core and get past the spinning rotating screw. Once we've destroyed it, head up. You'll have to be pushed all the way back down, but thankfully it'll go back down all the way once you go into the opening, and you can finally go up and eventually enter the pipe that we entered in order to get into this room. It is a pretty decent trek, but I think it is definitely shorter than the trek we had to take in order to escape from here the first time around. But you don't want to waste any time, that's for sure. Once exiting the pipe, go all the way over to the right and enter the elevator and head up, destroying a core as soon as you end up coming out of the elevator. Quickly hurry, firing bombs at any of the large enemies. Thankfully we had so many extra bombs while entering this area, we can spare a few here and there in order to destroy some of the tougher enemies that end up appearing. There also seems to be an overabundance of projectile firing guys along this wall, and they will end up causing you to get knocked back a little bit and delaying you by a few seconds. Once in this room, head down and then enter the pipe at the bottom. You'll be dropping down into another large room. This, of course, is the final room of the area. Hug the left wall just like you did the first time, and when you get near the bottom, destroy the breakable wall and enter the spaceship. As you can see, we were able to make it to the ship a lot quicker, and the screen wasn't even flashing by the time we were able to exit Air Fortress number 6. We now have only 2 more Air Fortresses to go in quest number 2. Not a whole lot more to say here, as it's pretty much the same exact layout as it was the first time around. Just destroy panels so you can get up into the areas where a bunch of extra energy lies. Thankfully, you start with a good chunk of energy, and as you can see, with just a few power-ups, we now have over 4,000 energy already. And since the final areas can be rather tough, it's probably a good thing that we have that much energy. It also allows us to kind of fool around a little bit and not have to conserve as much health during the Air Fortress segment itself. Thankfully, after grabbing a lot of power-ups, up to 5,000 energy, 20 bombs, we can land safely and enter inside the Air Fortress itself. We start up with another one of those giant rooms where you're just dropping down, staying around the middle area and avoiding as much fire as you can. Thankfully, we have so much extra energy that a few shots from this area won't do us too much harm. When you exit out of the elevator here, be sure to fire a bomb to at least destroy a couple of the canister robots before exiting out, because there's just so many projectiles that just keep knocking you back into the elevator itself. Head inside the elevator, and now start heading up, hugging the middle area again just so you can avoid more projectiles from the left and right walls and even the center. Here you'll have the choice of the top or bottom path. Choose the bottom path and enter the next elevator. And here, just head down and enter the next pipe on the very bottom. When you end up appearing, start working your way over to the right. There's going to be a few canister guys waiting for you, but not too much, and then you can enter the next pipe on the far right wall. When you drop out of here, be ready to destroy another one of those little mini cores, and there's going to be one of those clone guys waiting for you. Once he's done, then start destroying the wall and start destroying the core itself. You'll have some of those breakable walls during this segment that you'll actually have to bomb in order to break open. Do so and then enter the pipe. Then immediately enter the same pipe that you just had entered from. You'll be back in this room and you can enter the next pipe on the right side. When you appear here, go once again right inside the pipe, and when you enter into this room, you'll have a whole bunch of these guys trying to destroy you at the bottom, but try to get through them and start heading up. It gets a lot confusing with how many times you had to re-enter pipes there, and you'll have a little bit of that as well during the final fortress of the game. Enter the pipe at the very top, have your bombs ready and handy because you'll have a couple of guys you'll want to destroy here. Instead of going into the next pipe just slightly above you, ignore it and start heading over to the left. Thankfully, we still have plenty of bombs left and we can destroy a whole bunch of guys, including another breakable wall that we need to destroy with the bombs itself, and then you can enter the spaceship and blast off for the final level of the game. The 8th and final outside air fortress of the second quest. Of course, this is the toughest of the areas because just like the first quest, there's a ton of enemies here. They're all trying to gun at you, all trying to take you out, and there's a lot of projectiles on screen at once. There's not going to be as much health available during this segment as there was during the last level, but be sure to gather as much as you possibly can. As long as you have about 15 or so bombs, you should be good, but you'll want to get it more than that if possible. We have 20 bombs and 3,600 energy, and we enter into the final air fortress of the second quest. The final air fortress of the game is just as confusing as it was during the first quest, probably even more so this time around. You'll start off with a very big room. You have a couple of guys to destroy. Try to be careful with the amount of bombs you use, because you will have a couple of those giant mechs to fight, like we did during the final area of the first quest, and you'll want to have a few bombs for them because you'll have to destroy not one, but two of them during the area after you've actually destroyed the boss core. Once you exit out of the elevator here, instead of going to the right where all those canister guys are, instead head over to the left, and then go up and enter the next elevator. Instead of going up to the pipe, instead go to the elevator just below it and head down one. When you arrive, immediately fire out one of the bombs so you can try to take out one of the canisters on the far right wall, then start heading down the middle of the area. Unfortunately, there's going to be one of those spike guys waiting for you to fire up at you, so you won't be able to go down the center for long. When you make it out of here, watch out for a couple of those guys and take out another one of those mini cores, followed by one of the mechs and another mini core. Here we'll do like we did during the first time around here. You can either fire directly at him, or you can use the wall to your advantage and just fire at that in order to hit the guy just one platform above you. Here you'll once again go into an elevator that bypasses another one of the rooms while you're riding inside of it. However, this time around, instead of going to the elevator immediately to the right, instead head straight up and enter the pipe just north of you. You'll arrive in another room very similar to it, and once again, start heading north. Ignore the first elevator you see in the room and instead go into the elevator on the far right and go down. Once in here, start working your way around and start heading over to the far right. You'll see below you is the location of one of those mechs, but we won't be dealing with it right this second. Instead, just keep floating around and making your way over to another pipe on the far right wall. Entering the next pipe, you'll end up appearing in one of those weird wishbone-like platforms. Head out of it and choose whichever path you prefer of destroying either the top or bottom little core, and then when you make it over to the far left, of course, enter the elevator. You'll see a room with a couple of those other alien-like clones of you, and then you'll finally land right below it. Drop down and enter the pipe here. You'll now be in the room we had just bypassed by going into the elevator. Here you'll see there's two alien guys that we saw just a bit ago. Destroy them if you like with bombs, as well as the same for the mech itself. When you make it out of the elevator, just head north. Thankfully, you only have to travel along the right side during this segment, but you have to keep going in and out of the different platforms set up. Eventually, you'll reach the end of it and enter inside of another pipe. Once here, head straight north. This, of course, is the room that contains the boss chamber. Watch out for a bunch of the canister robots, some guys against the wall, as well as some of those multicolored rival clone-like guys. What I like to do here is, since I don't have a ton of health left, I'm going to destroy all the guys here, then land on this platform on the left side and wait for my health to rejuvenate. Once my health is rejuvenated, then I'll attack the actual core of the ship. Thankfully though, I do have plenty of bombs with me, just not a ton of health. Once you deliver the final hit to the core itself, drop down and enter the pipe on the left side. While it's not an exactly long journey to get to where we need to, you will have to battle the giant mechs, so that's what makes this area tough. Thankfully though, we have plenty of extra bombs left, so we can destroy the mechs as quickly as we can. Entering in the pipe on the right side, you'll appear in another room, which of course is the location for the second giant mech. Just do the same that you just did in the previous room and take it out with bombs and normal fire, doing your best to take out the projectile it fires out as well so you don't take too much damage. As long as you have like 600 or so health, you should be able to complete the area still. After you get out of the elevator, there's a bunch of guys waiting for you as you make your way right. Grab any extra health that they may drop and keep firing all of those last few bombs that you may have. Then enter the pipe finally all the way on the right side. When you emerge from the pipe, just drop down, destroy the wall, jump in the ship, and escape. You can now sit back and enjoy the true ending to Air Fortress. So there you have it, a slightly better ending, you have the stars in the background for the ending, and then you actually get to see the staff and credit roll. Air Fortress by HAL Laboratory, the creators of such great games like The Adventures of Lolo, Kirby, and then of course, later on to create the Super Smash Bros. Series, is just kind of an interesting game on the NES. It combines two different types of gameplay, has some pretty decent music, and while it may not be stellar in everything it tries to do, it still does something unique, and it's still a fun game to experience. After the credits wrap up though, you have your Presented by HAL America Inc., and then if you want to, you can reset the game and start the game all over again. However, with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.